this was 1994 and 1995 on NBC. And, it's really interesting if we look at the S-curve of technology adoption for the internet. So here's the internet here. You can see early 90s, massive S-curve, just bang, like a rocket ship, almost straight up, right? Where the adoption of the internet went worldwide. And then, a number of years later, we had the mobile wave, the smartphone adoption, which also went worldwide. Now, what's really interesting about this, I've lived through these periods of time, and I've seen clearly what happens as new technology permeates society. And we have a situation where the majority of people don't understand what's going on. They're asking questions. They are trying to figure out what's going on. What is this internet thing? Now, we see the same thing today with Bitcoin. People are saying, what is Bitcoin? How does it work? Is this real money? Why has it gone up so much? Why is it so expensive? Why is the price so high? How do I get Bitcoin? How do I use it? All this is the same thing. Same thing, all over again, right? So it is interesting looking through and seeing what's happening in society as people ask the same questions what they did back in the 90s when the internet started to take off. Okay, now what's really interesting about this is where we currently are today in 2021, almost 2022 as we go into the new year. So here we are today. Now this graphic was taken from the Invest Answers YouTube channel, and that's a channel I highly recommend that you check out. It's a fantastic channel. So here we are today, and we've got two S-curve adoption S-curves. We've got one for store of value, we've got one for medium of exchange, and this is for Bitcoin. So where we are today for Bitcoin in terms of store of value, you can see Bitcoin is an emerging store of value, and it's not going to be until the latter parts of this decade where it really comes into its own as a store of value. Okay, and some people are predicting that it's going to go into the millions and multiple millions of dollars per Bitcoin, which it probably will, and it will eclipse those values as well over time. Now, for medium of exchange, however, it's later. We're looking at 2035 before it really starts to, to take off. And it's, I guess, when we start to think about Bitcoin and specifically about the Bitcoin Lightning Network, we are way early, right? Way early. What I'm doing, INTJ Billing, I'm working at the cutting edge of technology in my own business where I've got my own Bitcoin Lightning Network node, and I'm setting up a business in order to provide professional remittance and digital exchange services to people who are interested in sending Bitcoin to people in Thailand, and also to businesses here in Australia who would like to utilize the Bitcoin Lightning Network. So I guess I'm a merchant provider. I'm a very early business in this space, providing merchant services. But it's not going to be probably another 7 or 8 years from where we currently are today, before we start to get an uptick. So I'm way early, way ahead of the S-curve in what I'm doing. And I'm establishing my business at a time where the S-curve hasn't even started to go up for Bitcoin in terms of medium of exchange. That's how early we are with the Bitcoin Lightning Network. Now, this second chart here, this is really interesting. It's an S-curve analysis, adoption rate. 2009, 0% of the population owned Bitcoin. It was way too early. Okay. By 2019, 10% of US households own Bitcoin. Now, I came into the space in early 2017. Right? Too early. There are people that I know who were in the space in 2014 because they were running businesses where they needed uncensorable money. Okay, these are people in Thailand who were experimenting with Bitcoin in 2014 because they were running businesses which, were sort of in a grey area where some of the services were technically illegal. So they were way too early, and they were using Bitcoin on chain, and they were trying to mine Bitcoin as well too early. Now, where we are in 2019, here you can see Bitcoin's here from 2019 to 2021. So this is where we are in 2021 going into 2022. You can see that it's still early on, but it's not ridiculously early. It's not too early. But we're going through the big uptrend of S-curve adoption at the moment. Okay, so there'll be a shakeout phase where the majority of the altcoins will go to zero. They'll lose a whole lot of value, and Bitcoin as the proof of work chain will continue on because it's like TCP/IP. It's the underlying protocol layer for value, essentially. Talking about money over IP. That's what Bitcoin is. Now, by the time we get to 2029, 90% of the population will have adopted Bitcoin. And that's the prediction. And that's when it will be too late from an investment standpoint. So where we currently are at the moment, we're here. The adoption rate is still quite low. I mean, it's more than 10%. They're saying 25% here. I think that's probably still too high. That's too high, that estimate. But it shows you that what's really interesting about this chart is that the amount of time it took to get from 0% to here, okay, it's the same amount of time that it takes to get from here up to 90%. So 10 years approximately, okay, and then another 10 years, 2019 to 2029, where, in the first 10 years, you've only got to 10%, but it only takes another 10 years to go from 10% to 90% adoption. And this chart's really interesting because most people, if they're not trained in computer science, if they're not mathematicians, people with a background in computer and math science like myself, and other people who are trained to recognize exponential growth, then it's very difficult for people to understand and to see what's coming. Now, in the discussions that I've had with business owners in Thailand, the feedback that I've gotten is, Clark, nobody's using Bitcoin, nobody's paying in Bitcoin, nobody's paying in my business with Bitcoin. In fact, only one person has ever paid with Bitcoin to buy a service that I'm providing. And I'm like, yes, I understand this, but you have to think exponentially. You have to think about where the puck is going, okay? So at the moment, we're still in store of value phase. We're not going to be in the medium of exchange phase for quite some time, right? But it's this time here where people are building products and services, people like myself, early adopters of the Bitcoin Lightning Network, early adopters of Bitcoin, early adopters of Lightning, can see where the puck is going, where it's going. And people like me, my channel, I'm taking you, the viewer, along for the ride, okay? I'm going to get a result in this business that I'm running. The business may succeed, it may fail. Regardless, I've got Bitcoin on the balance sheet, okay? So whatever happens at the end of the day, the business will still be worth something because of the value of the Bitcoin on the balance sheet. So because I took a package from work, because I'm living off a pension, because I've got my Bitcoin and other assets, I'm able to spend the time working at the cutting edge in Bitcoin, working on the Bitcoin Lightning Network at a very, very early very, very early stage of development. Because here we are today going into 2022. So we've got from 2022 up until about 2029 into the 2030s, okay, before we get this big, massive S-curve. So I guess what I'm saying is that I've got time. Now, if I go to Google and I type in Bitcoin Lightning Network merchant provider, there are no businesses that have got any ads that are advertising merchant services, Bitcoin Lightning Network merchant services to other businesses. Doesn't exist. Okay, that's how early I am. There's no ads in Google about this sort of stuff. Right. So I guess we all have to recognize that we are still early with Bitcoin. We are very, very early with Bitcoin as a medium of exchange. We're ridiculously early for building businesses on top of the Bitcoin Lightning Network, which is what I'm doing. Okay. Now, I've spent a lot of time and effort going the legal route and setting up as a registered with AUSTRAC, the Australian Transaction Reporting and Analysis Centre, to be a registered entity for being a money remittance provider and a digital exchange. If AUSTRAC, if they allow me to provide these services, I will be the first merchant service provider that is offering these types of professional services to businesses here in Australia. And I'd say I'm very, very early doing that, and one of the first, if not the first, to be doing it in Thailand for the Bitcoin Lightning Network. Okay, so yeah, just keep in mind that we are still very, very early. People are asking similar questions about Bitcoin as what they were asking about the early internet. Okay, we're still in the store of value phase for Bitcoin. We're nowhere near the medium of exchange phase, although there are people like myself who are working on bringing Bitcoin to the masses. And don't be under any illusions. As Bitcoin rises as a store of value and goes into the millions of dollars per Bitcoin, and we start, instead of talking about value in Bitcoin in terms of whole Bitcoins, and because it'll be very rare that somebody owns a whole Bitcoin, right? It'll be rare to even have a large fraction of a Bitcoin where we're going. Okay, so it makes sense that we start talking about Satoshis. And as we go up the store of value and up to around 2035, we're going to be talking about Satoshis. We're going to start to see exchanges, quoting Bitcoin in terms of its value in Satoshis, okay, in the future. Because it won't make sense to quote it in Bitcoin. Because if you see one Bitcoin's $1 million, most people look at it and they're not going to understand it and say, well, I can't afford to spend $1 million to get a Bitcoin, not understanding that they can buy fractions of Bitcoin. So it's going to make sense to value it in Satoshis. So yeah, just, I guess, going forward, keep this graphic in particular in mind, right? And remember, the lesson is it took from 0 to 10%, okay, of households owning Bitcoin, it took 10 years. From 10% to 90%, it's going to take another 10 years, which is astounding. And we really need to keep in mind S-curves with Bitcoin and the Bitcoin Lightning Network and exponential growth, okay? And the whole social aspect of this is really important. The people that you're surrounded by, the people that you talk to Bitcoin about, they're not going to be on the same level as what you are if you have a very good understanding of Bitcoin like what I do. On my Facebook page, for instance, I've got a lot of people from Thailand, the Philippines, and people from here in Australia as well. Now, it's become a running joke, me talking about Bitcoin, because the majority of people on my Facebook page don't understand it, and they're laughing about it, and they're calling me nerd boy, and they're taking digs at me because, and these people should know better because they're my age. I'm 42 years old. These people lived through the upper S curve of the internet and smartphones, but they're not in technology. They're not computer scientists like myself. They haven't trained as computer scientists. They haven't thought about things on an exponential scale like I have, and other people in the space have, and who understand technology adoption and S curves. Okay. So yeah, Wayne Gretzky, secret of his success, he skated to where the puck was going, where it's going. Okay. That's it from me. All the best, everyone. I'm Clark Towson, CEO of INTJ Billing. If you are interested in Bitcoin Lightning Network merchant services, please get in contact with me. I'd be happy to help you. Okay, bye-bye.